All right, so I think we can get on with the program for tonight. Actually, in Westchester County, we are, of course, this is the extent of my experience. I don't know what it's like across the border in Connecticut or New Jersey or whatever. But I have to say that we've been blessed with excellent public servants and candidates throughout all these years. This election is no exception. Our guest tonight on the Democratic side is George Latimer, who's our state senator currently from the Rye. I don't know what district number it is, George. So forgive
37.
me. I'm sorry, George.
37.
37. You don't look a day over. You don't look a day over 35, by the way. But district number 37 over in Rye, and on the Republican side, County Executive Astorino, as you can imagine, is also committed to about 17 functions tonight. That's where we want to move it along for George and George Latimer, George Oros, and Jim Maisano. But in his stead, we have George Oros, who's no stranger to this organization. George is Rob's chief of staff and head of economic development and involved with the IDA. So he's very vital to the administration. George is here on Rob's behalf. And last but not least, we have Jim Maisano, whom we've known for many years, a big supporter of the BRI, a county legislator from the Rochelle District. And Jim is it's kind of an interesting dynamic in the Board of Legislators right now. He is not only the Republican minority leader, but he also shares the chair with Mike Kaplowitz, who's the Democrat on the board. And everybody in Washington is talking about when are we going to get some bipartisan work done, a bipartisan effort. And I think that you working with Mike Kaplowitz has been a textbook example of bipartisanship and working together on, I'd like to think, all the right issues. But anyway, I've been asked, we drew lots, and the first lot will go to Jim Maisano, who will just speak for about 5 minutes, or on the county legislature and from a key legislator's point of view. Jim?
Hello, everybody. How you doing tonight? And thanks, Albert, for the kind words. We are coming to the end of 4 years of what we hope was some sanity in government. I think when we watch national politics, we don't always think there's sanity in government. But here in Westchester County, we've finished a 4-year experiment in a bipartisan leadership team on the Westchester County Board of Legislators, as Albert described. Rather than have one party in charge and the other party on the outs, we had a Democrat chair, Mike Kaplowitz, Republican vice chair, me. A first time in history of the Board of Legislators where the two leaders of the board were of different parties. Every legislator is either in the leadership or a chair of a committee. Everybody has a stake in what goes on in the Board of Legislators. Everybody's working together in a professional and a collegial way. So that's the 4th year. We're very, very proud of the work we've done for 4 years, Mike Kaplowitz and I. It's a new election this year. The new board will pick the new leadership, so I don't know if it keeps going, but I hope it does. Because when we look at Washington, we look at Albany, we don't always see bipartisan government, but it's happening right here in Westchester. And it's happened and worked really well. A lot of tough issues that we faced in the last 4 years were done. Maybe we didn't always agree, but we did it politely, collegially, working together in a bipartisan way. And certainly the BRI has been involved in many of our decision-making. Albert, Jeff, Maggie, we get phone calls. They're lobbying us, they're talking to us. They do a great job on your behalf, letting us know the needs of this organization. And frankly, I think they will tell you, it's easier to work with a bipartisan board than a board that was fighting. I mean, before Mike Kaplowitz and I put together this bipartisan leadership team, there were 8 lawsuits pending between the chair of the Board of Legislators and the county executive. That's ridiculous. Judges aren't supposed to decide problems facing our legislature. It's supposed to be done by the legislators. That's why you elected them. So we put an end to that kind of government, and I think it's pretty strong. And by the way, people always joke when I'm going around my district, how's Astorino the guy you work for? Let me remind everybody, the Board of Legislators at a minimum is a co-equal branch of government. But if you read the county charter, okay, which is our constitution, we are the governing board. The county executive works for the Board of Legislators. George and George, I just want you guys to remember that. The county executive works for the governing body under law, the County Board of Legislators. So this is an election year, as Albert told you, just to add some numbers to Albert's point. On a presidential election year, about 80 to 85% of the registered voters come out to vote. Okay, that's in a presidential year. In a governor year, when the governor's running, it's probably 40%, maybe 50% tops for governor. But the odd year, every odd year when the Board of Legislators runs, we run every odd year, county executive every 4, only about a third of the people vote. It's a very light turnout. So frankly, you should all vote because your vote will count more in a lower turnout. But it is a lower turnout, and it's important to have forums like this so let people know what's going on. So I'll give you a quick what's going on in the Board of Legislature in the elections. So there's 17 county legislators. I don't know if you know that, but you know it now. Currently there's 9 Democrats and 8 Republicans, but again, we're led by a bipartisan coalition. There's 9 contested races for the Board of Legislators. That's why I said I don't know who will be the chair and vice chair next year. We'll see who wins the elections. This past Tuesday, 2 elections were decided. Only a primary. The winner of the primary was nobody from the other party. So we got a new legislator this week. So I don't know if you remember Ken Jenkins, who was a longtime county legislator. Ken ran for county executive and opened up his seat. 4 people won a primary, and I believe a man named Chris Johnson, the councilman in Yonkers, won that race. So he'll be a new county legislator. But the other 16 county legislators are running for re-election. And we'll see what happens on election day. 6 of us are unopposed, and I'm one of them. Which is really great, because I'm having a really nice year. Because when you're running for office, trust me, all you do is run for office like 16 hours a day. So I'm very happy to be unopposed. And that's why, by the way, I'm the only one here, because the rest of them are all out campaigning right now. So a couple of things coming up, what's going on in the Board of Legislators. The most important job of a county legislator is to do the county budget. Okay, $1.8 billion, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of work. We start in early November, we finish in mid-December. That's the one time where county legislators are full-time. You're up there all the time working on the county budget. So in November, you'll start reading about that in the media. And our goal has been every year to hold the line on property taxes. We've worked very hard at holding the line on property taxes. We haven't raised property taxes in 6-7 years now, and it's getting harder than ever before. It's not like money is rolling in to the county government. We'll do our best to hold the line on taxes, but we're going to have a tough budget ahead of us as we do every year. One of the things happening on the Board of Legislators, which I say is unfortunate, again, I don't think I have to tell you about politics on a national level, somewhat bizarre at this point. It's somewhat pushing down on us where we're having debates over immigration and gun control, which seems to be ridiculous. That's not the job of the county legislators. We may be doing the people's business under the county charter for the Westchester County government. So that was something I found as someone, I'm the longest serving county legislator. That was a negative in the past year, that the national issues got pushed onto the county legislature. Debate that in Congress, not in the county legislature. Some of the things that do matter, quickly I'll touch on 3. Then you can hear from the more exciting county executive candidates. Playland has been a huge struggle for us. I think most people in Westchester want Playland to continue to be an amusement park. There's no other family kind of entertainment like it that exists. But the capital costs of an historic 100-year-old amusement park are getting to be extreme. So the county executive, Astorino, and the Board of Legislators decided we were going to try a different route. We hired an independent operator that's going to, we still own the park, but we have an independent operator that's going to try to do it a little differently. They believe that they can bring in more revenues to reduce the capital outlay, the capital cost, to keep it up and running. We hope they're right. We started with 9, we were down to 3, we picked 1. So we have an independent operator over the next year at Playland. You really all got to wish them well. We hope they're successful, get more revenue out of that park, so it's not coming out of the taxpayers' dollars. Airport, tough issue, particularly those who live around the airport who call us all the time. There's a proposal right now, I don't know if you've read about it in the media. Currently, we have an independent operator at the airport. That goes back a long time, decades. But we now have a proposal on the table of going with a new independent operator. Because there's a federal statute, I don't want to bore everybody with the details, but there's a federal statute that if an operator taps into that, they can bring more revenue into the county than we're currently getting. So my view is, I think all the legislators, bipartisan, was, well, let's see if they're right. Let's see if there's a way to change the operator at the airport and bring in more revenues to hold the line on taxes, okay. But the devil's in the details. We have a lot of due diligence, and what we decided to do was, there was one proposal last year. We didn't think we could make a decision when there's only one. That's not really fair. We did it by competitive bidding this year. We have an RFP out there. Now we have 3 really good bids in. We're going to drill down and analyze them. Hopefully, if one of them, the numbers are good, we might try a different operator at the airport. You will read in the papers, protesters saying, don't privatize the airport. Who's seen that in the media? Anyone? There's been a lot of press. It's kind of like that debate is going on in the media. It's different than the one I just described to you. We're deciding whether we're going to change the independent operator of the airport. We're not privatizing the airport. That's just not true. And that's been all over the media, and it's somewhat bizarre. So I'm having a debate that's real. The protesters continue saying, don't privatize the airport, when all we're doing is discussing whether we change independent operator. Lastly, one thing I'm proud of, just want to share with you, particularly with your backgrounds. I thought this past year we passed one of the most important economic development initiatives in the history of Westchester County. The lingo is North 60, but it's called the Westchester Bioscience and Technology Center. It's next to the Medical Center. It's a $1.2 billion biotech research center, which we approved on a bipartisan, unanimous vote, but we drilled down a year of independent review to make sure the deal was a good one for Westchester. 3 million square feet, mixed use, made basically a biotech center, hotel, all kinds of things like that. $9 million in property taxes at the county and local government, $7 million in rent comes into the county, if everything goes as we hope, it's $10 million extra in revenues to the county government. The reason I stick to those numbers is I think you'd all rather have us getting revenue that way than raising property taxes. So that's why I think this development is so important to the district of Westchester. 4,000 construction jobs. It's a 99-year lease for 60 acres of county property. That's why we're involved in this. It'll be completed in 10 to 15 years. I'm very excited about that because we found a way to take some county space that was unused and have a real future there with a $1.2 billion biotech facility, which I think we're all going to think is going to help move this county forward for decades to come. So that's my issues for tonight. I thank everybody for paying attention, and if you have any questions at the end, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is the Democratic nominee for County Executive, George Latimer, and he'll give us a summary of his vision and what he'd like to do for the benefit of Westchester citizens. George?
Thank you very much, Alvin. It's nice to be back because I've been here in other capacities as a state senator for different other sessions, and I really do appreciate what BRI does. As I was looking at the dates here from 1952, that gets pretty close to home since I entered the planet in 1953 at age 63, almost 64. But I think we're both going strong. We haven't deteriorated yet, neither the organization nor me. This is a sentimental moment because both of my Republican speakers tonight are friends that I've served with in county government. And Jim pointed out some of the bipartisanship that's happening in the board right now. But the actual beginning of bipartisanship happened almost 25 years ago with a gentleman named Steve Tenor, who served as chairman of the board when I became a county legislator in 1991. He was a Republican who appointed the first Democrat, and there was only one, to chair a committee after 90 years, or at that point 87 years, of the Republicans having absolute control of the county. George Oros became chairman of the board, and I voted for him as a Democrat back in 1996. I succeeded him as chairman of the board for the 2 terms that followed, and I have the honor of being the first chairman of the board who appointed members of both sides of the aisle to serve in all different committees. Appointed Jim to chair a committee, as well as George, the Republicans and the Democrats. So the moment today is a good moment, but the moment was not unique. The moment goes back over 20 years, and I'm very proud of the service that I had when I was chairman of the board. Let me just tell you a little bit about my background. Since I'm the challenger in the race, you know more about the incumbent, Rob Astorino. I was born on the south side of Mount Vernon. I was the only white kid in a black neighborhood. I grew up with a mom who was a factory worker, and my dad was a maintenance man. He was head of maintenance at Beach Point Club in Mamaroneck. I went to the public school system of Mount Vernon. We talk a lot about urban education. I'm a product of that urban education class of 1970. And I went on to go to college at Fordham University, undergraduate, commuter, and then New York University, where I have a master's degree. I spent 20 years in corporate life in this industry, the hospitality industry, where I served in sales and marketing capacities. I was marketing director of a couple of hotels around the country, lived in 4 or 5 different states before coming back to Westchester in the mid-'80s. And in my public service, I served as a member of the Rye City Council, unpaid position. I served, as I mentioned, in the county legislature for 13 years, 4 of which as chairman, 2 years when I was minority leader. At the time, George was chairman of the board. And then I've served now the last 13 years in the state legislature, proving that I just can't hold a job, going from place to place. But my service in the state legislature is in both houses. I've served in both the Assembly and the Senate. All of that resume stuff only your mother really wants to hear, unless you look for what are the experiences that you bring to the table. As I run for county executive, recently having won the Democratic primary for this position, and sir, I'll be on a number of different lines on the ballot, what I think I bring to the discussion that we have is a solid background in business and a solid background in government, and government at different levels, at the municipal level and at the state level. You cannot effectively run Westchester County unless you have relationships in Albany. Now, there are things about Albany that are hideously wrong, and I've been a critic of what I've seen in Albany. You may not see it presented that way by my opponent, but the bottom line is that you need to know how to get decisions done out of Albany. You need to get home rule legislation, you need to get grant money, you need to be able to get in, sit down, meet with the committee chairs and the leadership of those houses. You can't stand on the outside and throw hand grenades. You've got to be able to work within that context. It is as much a challenge as it is as an executive working with the legislature. Now, Jim pointed out that the county executive works for the legislature. What I've seen over an extended period of time is the county executive driving the train unnecessarily. So one of my visions as county executive is to have a true partnership with the county board of legislators and not necessarily tell the legislators who are in my party what they have to do in order to defend my administration, but let those initiatives come from the bottom up. And I know that because my years as a legislator at all these different levels, I'm out in the community. I'm hearing what people think and see more than any governor, any county executive, or any big city mayor is. And when somebody's garbage doesn't get picked up, you know, they'll call the councilman. When there's a problem on a county road, well, they'll call the county legislator. I've experienced that, I've lived that, and I understand how to translate that. I'm going to take a different point of view than my friends. We have the right for friendly disagreement. If Rob is here, I'm sure you'll see some debates between me and him. You'll hear both of us make our case. I think we have a hurricane offshore, but it's a sunny day. And the meteorologists are telling us that the hurricane is going to hit, and we say, well, it's a sunny day. No, put up the plywood now. Prepare. Put the sandbags around your house now, because in the space of 5 days, that hurricane is going to hit. In terms of Westchester County, what's the hurricane? The hurricane is a fiscal problem that is of our own making. We have chosen to bond for things that we should not bond for. Things like certiorari payments, which you all would know, managing apartment buildings and real estate projects, which is when you go as a commercial entity and rightfully get a discount on your taxes because of the change in the valuation of your property by revenue streams. And historically, that has been cashed up year after year, but now in the last few years, this county has taken advantage, and the state made it available, generally speaking, for poor places that were having distress to spread that out over time, but it puts a backfilled impact on things that you should budget for today and pay for today. And the same is true for pension costs. That the pension costs are extreme is a reality. But we could go the route of New Jersey and Illinois, have a tremendous obligation in the future as a state, and then find ourselves in a terrible fiscal crisis, which is what's facing both New Jersey and Illinois. Now let me give you a quick story about that. Christie Whitman, governor of New Jersey, considered a very successful governor, went on to be EPA head at the time of 9/11, maybe not so successful then. But Christie Whitman was elected to 2 terms as governor of New Jersey. She was very popular at the time. She kept taxes low. Christie Whitman began the process of not paying enough money into the pension fund as a legal obligation. By doing that, she started the creation of a problem, which Jim McGreevey didn't correct, and John Corzine didn't correct, and Chris Christie didn't correct. Because when you have to correct a problem that starts to morph out like this, it becomes harder and harder to do. That is a reality that we face in Westchester County. We've gone into our reserve funds deeper than we should, in addition to borrowing what we should. We've estimated revenue, sales tax revenues. You see what e-commerce is doing to Main Street in terms of revenue. You cannot overestimate sales tax because you create a budget gap. In addition, we've got 9 bargaining units in the county, unions. We have to negotiate contracts with them. Right now, all 9 of those unions are out, meaning there's not a pending contract. If we don't deal with that obligation is going to grow and grow, along with these other things that are growing. These factors are why Moody downgraded us from a AAA bond rating to less than a AAA bond rating, and the other rating agencies are keeping a close eye on Westchester. The bottom line is this. You can, and you know this as a business person, and I know this as a business person, in any 1 or 2 or 3 years, I can make the bottom line look good by deferring costs to the future, by deferring maintenance, capital projects, but in the end, you pay for it. There was a commercial that was out about 15 years ago where a father is telling his son about putting oil in the engine of the car. And he says, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. And anybody who's ever had an engine block, crack, or a transmission redone knows that it's a heck of a lot more expensive than doing the maintenance along the way. So I think this election is not going to be about the TV ads. There's some out today. You know, I've been through this already. I know what to expect as the challenger. But we're either going to take a long-term look in this county the way our forebears did, or we're going to worry about this year's taxes and this year's taxes and this year's taxes. And that hurricane's going to hit us, and we're not going to be ready for it. And then someone is going to say, why didn't they do this back in this decade? What are we going to say then? Well, the decision makers won't be around. Maybe they won't be in office, maybe they won't be around at all. But you have to plan prudently. And if there's castor oil to take, well then we better damn well take it while we can. And if you don't think this hasn't happened before, it's happened in Nassau County. It's happened in the city of Yonkers. It happened, the mother of all of these things, in New York City in the mid-70s. So I'm not Cassandra. I want to work bipartisanly. My whole record of my life proves that. I respect my friends on the other side of the aisle. But let me tell you something. If you just think every year delivering a zero tax, if that's what it is, and I'll debate that issue too with the county executive, if you think that's all that county government is about, you're wrong. And we'll pay a terrible price for it in the future. And that is the debate that we need to have in this county over the next 60 days. Whatever the voters decide, they'll decide, but they need to hear that alternative point of view. Thanks.
Thank you, George. And now another George Oros, will speak on behalf of the county executive. George?
Thank you, Albert. Thank you, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here again. And there's a football game tonight, so I'm not going to take too long. You know, Albert told me to be here at 6:45. We'll be on at 7. What time is it? He's on Italian time. Anyway, let me just say a few things about. I think Senator Latimer is correct about you can't do this for 2 or 3 years, but for 8 years, we have not had a property tax increase in this county. We still have a AAA bond rating. So you do that by managing government. You do it by putting in systems and policies that streamline the way we work. The county workforce is 17% less than it was when Rob Astorino took office. So I'm going to ask everybody in this room, have you noticed the difference? No. We're getting the work done. We've gotten rid of the bloat and the fat that was in this county government. Remember 8 years ago, we had 13, 14 years of double-digit tax increases. 50% tax increase over 8 years under the prior administration. 0 over the last 8. Still, county services are running. They're preserved. We still have our AAA bond rating. We still have the same reserve fund. In fact, it's higher than when Andy Spano left office, our reserve fund right now. And we do that, again, we passed every stress test that the Democratic state controller has put before us. So the idea is not to spend money if you don't have it. You know that in business. You can't just go out and raise your prices. Government can go out and raise taxes, and it's guaranteed it's going to get paid. But what Rob Astorino has done as a county executive is managed a county government. And we live by the what we call the 3 Ps from the first day we came into office. The first one is the taxpayer. The second one is to preserve essential services. And the third one is to promote economic development. This county has created 44,000 private sector jobs in the last 8 years. When you do that, you grow the tax base, so you don't have to increase the taxes. That's the key. So anyway, I wasn't going to say any of that, except that the door was opened by the senator. And about those unions, the reason we haven't reached agreement with the biggest union in this county is because they refuse to pay even 1% of their health care benefits. Can you imagine? Do you have an ability to have that where you work or who you employ to not contribute to their health care? Rob Astorino broke that mold with 6 of the 7 unions, but the biggest one refuses, and he's holding his ground, just as he did in the housing issue, just as he's done with so many other things that have helped make this county great. So my fear is if there's somebody else in charge, these unions are going to continue to roll that bill. Right now, Westchester County has to budget 70% for fringe benefits between the pension. And by the way, the pension is not controlled by Westchester County. It's controlled by the folks in Albany. They set the pension. They set the terms. So when you talk about that, about having to borrow for the pension, it's because the state sets those parameters. They haven't done anything to reform pensions in this state over the years. And it's about time they do. Because you have people that after 5 years are vested in the pension system. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Anyway, let me talk about a couple other quick things, okay? And I talked about 3 Ps, there's another 3 Ps, public-private partnership. One of the things that we have tried to do in Westchester County under Rob Astorino is unlock hidden assets the county has to free that up to fuel the county government rather than taxpayers paying for county government. Somebody talked about, Jim Maisano talked about the North 60. What a great opportunity it is for the county. 60 acres of land on the Valhalla Reservation, the Grasslands Reservation, been fallow for decades, not doing anything. We put out an RFP, we have somebody to come in. Board of Legislators unanimously approved a 99-year lease. Once this is up and developed, not only is it going to bring jobs, bring a vibrant economy, bring together this biotech that we have now and this biomed cluster that we have with Regeneron that came in just a few years ago and located here in Westchester County. That's going to go back on the tax rolls, which helps the county taxpayer and the town of Mount Pleasant taxpayer, and it's going to bring jobs. We did it with Playland. We finally got Playland to a situation where it's not taxpayers investing in it, it's a private entity investing in it. And we have the 3P proposal for the airport. And Jim touched upon it, but let me explain exactly what it is. County airport for years ran a profit. The problem is, under federal law, that money could only stay at the airport. It couldn't be used to hire more police. It couldn't be used to offset social services costs. It couldn't be used for any of that type of stuff. It was at the airport. In 1996, Congress and President Clinton signed a law that said, we're going to try an experiment here. 10 airports that are municipally run of a certain size can go through a public-private partnership. And if the FAA approves that public-private partnership, the revenue that's sitting at that airport can go to that government to be used for governmental purposes, whatever it is. And any future revenues or profits that come in are shared with that governmental entity. It took a long time. San Juan Airport did it. It saved. Midway Airport was ready to do it in Chicago, except that the week before they were going to sign it is when Lehman Brothers crashed. So a lot of the investors backed out. By the way, the city of Chicago still got $30 million because they had an upfront fee and a penalty for backing out. So they got $30 million for doing nothing. And so now this is what we're doing. We're going through a process now. So what this will allow us to do is release those funds so that we can offset that. So we don't have to, there is no doomsday here. We have gone 8 years without raising property taxes with a reserve fund exactly where it is. And in a tough economy. By the way, the economy is going better. We just got the sales tax numbers for August. We're 12% ahead of our projection for the month of August. So, you know, the economy lately has been picking up a little bit. I hope all of you are seeing some of that. I know anybody in the contracting business, I heard on the radio today, they can't get enough people to go to Texas and Florida because they got too much business to do up here, which is fantastic, and that's what we like. Let's see. Oh, the housing issue. I just want to bring that up. Again, another example of a county executive committed to principle. He's not stubborn. He's not mean. He just has certain principles he lives by, and one of them was, we are not going to kowtow to HUD. We are going to preserve local zoning. I know some of you here don't want to hear that, but we're going to preserve local zoning. We're going to comply with the settlement. We did. Not only, we didn't only build 750 units of fair and affordable housing, we're already at 820 units of fair and affordable housing, way above the settlement numbers. Our AI has been accepted. There's nothing left for us to do. We're doing a community outreach. So Rob Astorino accomplished that, despite people in Washington and some people here in White Plains in our own county legislature trying to make sure that we would fail at that. So to me, I think this is going to be a great election. It's going to be a great debate. It's going to be a record of 8 years of accomplishment, of no tax increases, of a AAA bond rating, of a reserve fund intact, and of a county moving forward against whatever the other side may bring up. So with that, I thank you all for listening. And the kickoff's got to be soon, right?
Yeah.
All right, take care. Thank you.
Since they're all pressed for time, we'll take questions. I only ask that you ask a question, be concise, no speeches, no, preludes or anything. Just ask your question and keep it short and concise, because we want to get as many questions in before each of these gentlemen respectively have to go on to their next meeting. So,
My next meeting is that football game.
all right. Questions for either Mr. Latimer, or Mr. Oros, or Mr. Maisano. I don't want you to all jump in now. I want you to contain your enthusiasm for asking questions. Any questions? Surely. Yes, young lady, don't be shy. Stand up and ask your question.
So my question is to all of the three officials, and that is regarding the major corporations that are in Westchester, like IBM, like General Motors used to be here. What is being done to incent them to continue to stay in Westchester County, and because that's kind of their...
So the question is regarding especially the big corporations, IBM and PepsiCo and the like. What is the county doing to keep them here, providing incentives? And I guess on the other side, what the county isn't doing or what they would do. So who wants to take a crack at that? Don't be shy, gentlemen. This is politics.
I'm ready.
It's George's job right now.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, I'm very democratic with a small d.
In fact, we've already done something. Dan Yogurt was going to move from Greenberg to Texas. And when we got wind of that, County Executive Astorino sat down with those folks. What can we do to help? We sat down with the city of White Plains. We worked with the state of New York. We put together a great package to keep them here. And they're going to be literally across the street here in a year or so. And they're bringing more jobs here. Just 2 months ago, a bank from New York City, it's not from New York City, they're actually from Tokyo, but they're located in New York City, and I have trouble with English, let alone Japanese. Sumitomo, something or other, it's SMBC, that's how I know it, something Bank Corporation. They're moving from New York City to White Plains, bringing 350 jobs with them, plus adding another 100 over the next few years. And we've been working very closely in the last week with the state of New York, a couple of our municipalities, and a couple of sites that we have. As you all know, Amazon is looking to come here. And we're making a very serious bid. We're putting together a very serious proposal. And, Westchester, New York State's going to be a part of whatever comes up with that. And that will be, if we do that, that'll be a real home run. So.
Okay.
I think the role of the county in incentivizing keeping those companies really gets down to talking with them to understand what they consider to be a priority. Because I've worked inside some major corporations, subsidiaries of Nestle and ITT, I can tell you that it's not always what a person in government thinks is the major incentive. Now, they'll certainly take money if you want to throw some money at them, and certainly that's part of the incentive to get them to stay. But there's also other issues that matter to major corporations, such as access to affordable housing. They want their workforce to be able to live within a proximate range of where their corporate headquarters are. They don't want their commuters living 40, 50 miles away. And so I think we talk about affordable housing and how we've done that. That's another debate to be had. But we need to do more affordable housing because we need to make sure that the housing of that workforce is available to them. In addition to that, our infrastructure, we talk as much as we do about keeping our taxes down. But if you've driven on roads and highways in this county, some of it is state, some of it is local, and some of it is county. That infrastructure is lacking. I was on the Bronx River Parkway a couple of nights ago. That's a county road. Let me tell you, you want to drive that at night, you run a risk. And we have an obligation as a county government, as we do as a state government. I'm not exonerating anyone, to make sure the infrastructure is there as well. And we also have to make sure that our concerns with mass transit work. And how do we use the Beeline bus system to get certain people to workplaces? I watch along the Westchester Avenue corridor, the people that get on the Beeline bus in Portchester under the trestle, and they are bound for work at a hotel or an office park along that corridor. When we talk about what's going to happen in Washington, Donald Trump is talking about a $54 billion cut in domestic spending. When he cuts domestic spending, he's going to cut bus transit, well, mass transit in general, and housing, a host of these things. Now, if you don't personally need housing, as far as you're concerned, cut away. If you don't need to be on that mass transit, cut away. But the people, to get to their jobs so that these businesses can function, need that mass transit, and they're working in jobs for which their compensation is at this level. It keeps them working rather than on welfare. So the issue of maintaining our current business is one part the incentives we make, but it's also one part understanding what those corporations need, which is more than just dollars and cents in that fashion. Let me add one more thing to it. You asked the question in terms of I-287. Let me broaden the question, because where we are hemorrhaging are in the smaller blue-collar manufacturing businesses that made up the south side of Mount Vernon, the south portion, west portion of Yonkers, portions of New Rochelle along the Webster Avenue corridor. Those businesses, when they leave, they take with it the kind of jobs that my mom worked at. Now, I love my mom. She's a blessed memory. She was not going to work in a corporate office park. That was not her skill set. And there's a lot of people like my mom and dad who work with their hands. And those jobs are disappearing. And we need a cogent, effective plan to maintain what we have and to attract those businesses that are currently in Brooklyn or the Bronx and want to expand and move further. So I would summarize the question by saying that this is an area which, in my judgment, is bipartisan in the way we approach it. I don't think, frankly, that any government can and should take credit for the general economic growth of an area. I think Westchester County is attractive for reasons that have nothing to do with whether I'm county executive or somebody else is county executive. We need to mesh our efforts alongside those that are happening in business. And truthfully, the people who are in commercial real estate do the very best job of identifying the companies that are going to come into Westchester. They do that professionally, and then they come to the county government or whatever government, local government, cut through this red tape. We need this much dollars to make the deal work. Those of you who do this know exactly what I'm talking about. And sometimes, and I fault Democrats as well as Republicans. There's so much hubris. I did this and I did that. It's a combination of things that will raise the tide forward. Now, I want to apologize. Albert has said about the time frame. I really have to go, and I didn't want to miss this or send a surrogate, but if you'll forgive me, I am going to leave because I'm late for my next appointment. Obviously, if you have a question for me, I'll give you my email address. It's LatimerGeorge, without punctuation, @gmail.com. So if you want to talk about anything, the airport deal, Indian Point, you name it, send me an email. I'll do my very best to respond. And if I don't respond, you can tell Albert and he'll beat me over the head. Thank you very much.
Well, considering the paucity of questions, I haven't used that word in 20 years, but we're going to call it a night, but I have to, just on a personal note, I was thinking about, and George Oros might appreciate this, also George Latimer. I've had the privilege, I guess, looking over my years in this county, of either working for or working with county executives Ed McCallion, God rest him, Al Del Bello, God rest him, Andy O'Rourke, God rest him, Andy Spano, and now Rob Astorino and his wonderful crew, and even George Latimer, who has been, as an assemblyman and as a county legislative assemblyman, and most recently as a state senator, has also shown a deep understanding for this industry and has come through for us on many state-related issues called Bucana legislation. So I'm happy to say that I work with, on both sides of the aisle, some of the finest gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, that I've ever had the pleasure of knowing and working with. So Jim Maisano and George Oros, thank you so much for coming. And our best regards to Rob Astorino and to George Latimer on the election. Whoever your county legislator is or challenger is, know who they are, be involved. When I heard a 33% participation rate during the off-year elections, I happen to know that in Russia, they have a higher percentage of people who vote than even the United States.
And they only have one candidate.
And they only have one candidate. So, you know, I don't want to sound like, you know, something out of the movie, the Russians are coming, the Russians are coming. But really, given our history and where we came from, and taxation without representation and all that stuff, the percentages of voting should be much higher than they are. So be aware of your elections, local, dog catcher, county legislator, and give it some attention and give it your vote. So on that civic note, I'm not really used to all this, but on that civic note, thank you all for coming out. Thank all the directors and heads of the 7 families. And see you at our vendor showcase on October 5th. And bring several guests. We want lots of traffic. Thanks so much. Safe home, everybody.